Welcome, everybody. This is the Montessori show of Friday the 13th, 2025. Hope you're all doing well. I am Jeanne-Marie Pennell, speaking to you live from San Diego, California, with my dear friend Simone.
Hi, Simone Davis here, calling in from Amsterdam. And look, I'm in summer clothes. I mean, it's unseasonably hot here. And it's a very sweet message from Ennis. We missed you. I know it's been a long time. We're now doing these like twice a year. And it's been since November last year that we last saw you all. So welcome
Yeah,
again.
yeah. And I was actually thinking of that November, like a few days after that, I went off and had to take care of some family issues or my father's passing. So that's kind of a little bit why we weren't online too much. But yeah, we're happy to be back and to answer all your Montessori positive discipline questions. And today we thought we would kind of review maybe a little bit of Montessori, but really Montessori through the ages, because I think that oftentimes people think that Montessori is just for preschoolers. That I think is a myth that it's just for young children. But today we're going to learn that it's way more than that. Um, so I think maybe I will start with kind of birth through six. Is that okay?
That sounds lovely. And I think that it's beautiful. Maybe we can do this episode in honor of your father because it's through all the ages and we're going to even get to the elderly as well.
Exactly.
And so
Exactly.
how you can even navigate those things with
Mm,
dignity and compassion.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
our
you.
heart goes to you. That's never easy to
No,
have
it's not.
a
It's
loved one
not.
pass.
But yeah, thank you for that. Um, so let me see. I hope it's recording correctly because I'm talking, but I'm seeing you, Simone. So I don't
It
know.
has the recording button. I see it on my hand at the
Okay.
very top. Yeah.
Okay. Um, so let us start with birth. So I'm a Montessori guide that is trained from birth through six. But since then, I've also become a birth doula and a postpartum doula. And I think that that was really initiated by the training that I had in Denver with Judy Ryan, one of our lovely trainers. And to really understand that Montessori starts really at conception. When we understand that, when we know how to prepare for birth itself, that we are the child's first environment. Really, there is, what we call an internal pregnancy. So that whole life, from the zygote to the embryonic period to the fetal period and then birth, we need to be knowledgeable so that we can have a healthy, nurturing environment for our unborn child. And then really thinking about what do we want the birth environment to be about, right? Montessori, we often talk about this prepared environment that we create for our children. And Simone shares a lot of that with her work at Jacaranda Tree and creating that environment for the young children. But birth itself is going to be their first environment outside of the womb, right? We prepare ourselves to have a healthy environment for them when they are in the womb, and then the birth environment is very important. So, I do a lot of work of just really sharing with families what is going to happen during the birth, what are some elements that you can create so that you feel safe. Birth is something that is very natural, that most mammals want to go into a cave and just be alone and birth. And unfortunately, today, birth environments have become hospitals, which, if you're a healthy pregnant person, there's no real need to be in a hospital because you're not sick. So consider that, right? Of either staying at home or a birthing center or such. But if you do choose a hospital, there are ways to make it feel comfortable and safe and all of that. And that's kind of, the work that I do when I work with clients as a birth doula. And then that is their first environment. And then from that moment on, we are caring for this new human. And if we know how important their work is of having to adapt to their time, place, and culture, we can be more aware of their needs, right? We learn to observe. And I think that's a big point that I share with parents prenatally and right away postpartum is this, what Montessori called the scientific observer is to really observe your child. Like this is a unique child. This is a unique experience. And I think we get to learn a lot from observing them and knowing and learning what their needs are and understanding their cues and so forth. So for me, that is part of the preparation, and then really the physical environment, right? We start with that beautiful little tamponcino that we've mentioned before, which is kind of this little security pillow that we like to have. If we get it before birth, it's nice to actually sleep with it because then your scent is on there, and that will be a very securing point of reference for your child because your child is already has the sense of smell in utero. So that, and then we're preparing, an environment where we're creating kind of basic areas for sleep, for feeding, for movement, for physical care, which will evolve as the years progress. And we are very in tune with their natural development. We try to, it's best to not constrain them in any way, right? To put them in containers that is going to constrain their natural movement, such as, the baby industry wants us to buy these, entertainment centers, exercisers, and all this. They really don't need like your face is entertainment, a plant is entertainment, the clouds in the sky is entertainment. They don't need any, plastic battery operated noise making toys. So we're really slowing things down. Everything is coming online, right? Their senses are coming online. Their visual sense, their auditory sense, all of that is slowly coming online. So we want to honor that and go slow with them. And really, when we say the movement, like to really let a newborn and a, non-walking child develop their movement, it's simple. It's just putting them on the floor on a mat or on a blanket outside so that they just can discover what their body is capable of. That is
Yeah.
the best
Should we
thing
move
that you
on
can do for your
to
child.
toddlers and the
What?
preschoolers? Let's move on to the toddlers and preschoolers too. So
Sorry,
we're
sorry, I get
I
very
know
I
you love your babies.
I love my babies, right? You know me. And so yes, toddlers and preschoolers. So we've gone through this, phase where they've developed their body, they know what they're capable of. They're now standing, and their hands are need important work. And this is where the toddler comes in, where we're really giving them very purposeful, intelligent work for their hands. Again, no need for entertainment, no need for phones and iPads and all of that. It's about purposeful work, whether it is helping us in the kitchen or cleaning or gardening or just manipulating toys that are, again, have an intelligent purpose is really important. And that toddler phase can be overwhelming sometimes because it is the child who is coming, kind of their independence is coming online, and they're figuring out that they can say no and that they have their will is developing. And here it's very important to give them choices, two choices, just two choices. And to you really help them develop that will, right? We are helping them develop that will and that independence. So really, again, that environment is going to be very critical in helping them have some agency and some independence. And then as so in this is I'm talking more at home, but if we're looking at the Montessori environments too, for the younger children, for the babies, it is the nido. So it starts around 8 weeks until they are basically walking logically. I know with different states or different countries it can look differently, but originally it was for the non-walkers, and then the walkers are is the toddler environment, and then we have what we call the casa or the primary environment, which is 2.5 to 6 years old. That's where I first did my training, that's where I worked, and that is where we're really helping the child with giving them the keys to the world, right? We're helping them develop all of their senses. We are really going deep into language development, into mathematical concepts, into botany and geography and music and all sorts of just amazing things. So on to you. Then six, we move into another stage,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So the 6 to 12-year-olds are the second plane of development in Montessori. And I'll keep it really brief because I know we want to get to all your questions as well. But I wanted to talk about the respect and dignity that we can show to the 6 to 12-year-olds because they are at the most mentally capable age, and they're also very strong physically because it's a much more stable period. You know how much growth there is in the first 6 years, and then actually it stabilizes a little bit. So I like to tell parents it's a little bit more stable at this age, so that they know, okay, this volatile, difficult period is over. But sometimes what happens is we still have this power over kind of perspective over children. And what happens is we still think that we know better than this little child. And actually, a child from 6 to 12 has a lot of interest, they're curious about the world, and we can really put that out, put that fire and burning curiosity out, or we can spark it and we can make it really interesting. So I think that at this age, showing respect is not necessarily with gentle hands like we're doing with the baby and that kind of thing, because we're not physically handling them so much, but it's respecting them by listening to their ideas, not shutting it down, being curious about asking them for more, helping them to get their answers, and that kind of thing as well. Um, so I think that would be my main thing that I wanted to say about the 6 to 12-year-olds. And similarly for the 12 to 18-year-olds, something that I think we overlook in general society is actually that the 12 to 18-year-old period is actually preparing them to become an adult. And we instead sit in the car and just drive them around, like to sport practice or music and those kind of things. And actually, they need big responsibility and they want to feel valued. And at the same time, they're super volatile again, and they're really hard to be around sometimes when they've got big emotions. But if we can validate how they're feeling, if we can be the safe place that they come to, then they're still going to find a place for us in their lives as their peers become important as well. So I think respect and dignity at that age looks like, for me, really, again, listening to them, helping them to make their big ideas happen. So if they're really upset about what's happening in the world, we can not say, oh, you should join this, but we can say, oh, what would that look like? Could you find other people that are interested in that as well, and helping them to make that happen? And then as we get older, even adults can be Montessori adults. And so respect and dignity looks like that we're waiting in the queue and we see someone having a hard time and we see if we can support them in that way. Or that we just say good morning and how are you to the person who packs up our groceries. Or that we stop and talk to an elderly neighbor and help them. And then moving on to the respect and dignity for elders, I think it's super. I'm getting so interested in the elderly care at the moment. So from the beginning of life, maybe to the end of the life, because when I hear about the work that Anne Kelly's doing and a lot of other Montessorians now in the work of dementia and elderly care, they set up the environment so that the adults, so the elderly can do as much as possible for themselves. So instead, I can picture a dining room where my grandmother was in her nursing home, where they just sat there all pretty much without any purpose or any role left. And actually, many Montessori settings, they have a buffet where the elderly can come and help themselves. And if you're more able than the person before you, then you might help them, put some peas onto their plate for them. But again, it's this Montessori, everyone helps each other, and we help ourselves as much as possible. And I got to see at the AMI AGM in April some beautiful clips about where there was a elderly person who had been put into a wheelchair when they went into a nursing home. And that was just for convenience. But actually, they taught the elderly person to walk again. And then they were able to help wash dishes in the evenings. And they had this role, this purpose, which is really important as part of dignity. So I think we've talked for long enough. I
Yes.
hope that gives you a nice introduction as how we can show respect and dignity through all the ages and stages and a little nice review. And I loved Jean-Marie's big input in about the babies because that's where it all starts, and it's
Mhm.
never too early to start with Montessori, and equally, it's never too late to Montessori. So if you're on the call for the first time, then welcome.
Yes, and I would like to comment on a comment. Le Maître, I'm not sure the name, but I apologize because she says that that maybe my comment about birthing in a hospital. There is nothing wrong with birthing in a hospital. I birthed both my children in hospitals. It was more about how I guess it is the difference about birth being managed by others. And for me, it's really important to, as a birthing person, to know that your body is doing what it needs to do, and it was created to birth, and that you are not in any way sick, unless, of course, there is, a medical issue. It could be high blood pressure. There could be something with the baby. This person had preterm baby, so my apologies if I sounded like off-puttish about hospital birth. It's just, I guess, what I'm seeing, what I'm observing, is makes me sad sometimes that we have kind of given up on owning our own births. And sometimes I feel that we let other people manage it. And I see a lot of medical interventions that shouldn't be happening, that are totally unnecessary. So that's more where I was coming from. So my apologies if it sounded like I was shaming anything, because I was not.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
So we got some questions before the call as well, which we can tackle now. And if you have any questions for those of you who are live on the call, you can pop them in the chat, or you can also put up your digital hand, and then we can unmute you and you can ask a question as well, which is always fun to get in dialogue with you as well. So I think Kate's questions are fun one to start with. And I'll throw it to you, Jean-Marie. It says, how does Montessori practice creativity and its importance in personal development at every age, 0 to 100 plus? That'll keep us busy for a while. No.
Well, I think for one thing is that creativity is really something that comes from within. So it's really about letting our children explore things on their own, right? As opposed to, and this, I guess I'm coming more from the place where 0 to 6 in Montessori, we say that we want to give information about the concrete world, right? And oftentimes people say, oh, well, that's not very creative. But that is the foundation of creativity. If you know the foundation of everything, then you can fantasize and create your own fantasies, as opposed to maybe in literature where we tend to want to share all these fanciful stories to our children, but those are created by adults. They're not from a child's mind. So it's really about giving them the tools to then be creative. And then also, in the physical environment, and I think you're better at this, Simone, is how to kind of set up little, activities where they can explore their creativity through crayons, through clay, through Play-Doh, through all sorts of things, and being in
Yeah.
nature.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that creative, like Montessori, is essentially a pedagogy that enhances creativity in a child because we're basically instead of telling them this is how you do something, we're saying, can you work this out for yourself? And so then they're actually getting their creativity sparked. Okay, if I don't know an answer, then I have to work out the solution. So they're really good at solving problems and being creative in that ways. So there's many ways to define creativity as well. There's also the creativity, like the handwork. I think 6 to 12-year-olds, you see more imagination coming to life. So yes, you're in reality in the first 6 years. And then as you move into the 6 to 12 age group, that's the time when you can share the literature and they can share the imagination. They can understand what's real and what's not real. So yeah, it does sound like we're always focusing on concrete all the time. But that's because we talk about the 0 to 6 years, but actually the 6 to 12 is when you plant little seeds, and then your ideas can take off yourself. Like I love the example that I heard in my 6 to 12 training, where if you've seen towers from all around the world, then imagine the tower you can create, because you can create something that no one's ever even thought of before. So I
Yeah.
think that creativity is like big, huge ideas.
Yeah.
And then the creative corner in our Montessori classrooms often gives beautiful materials, beautiful high quality materials. Maybe less is more. Like maybe you can't afford lots and lots of it, but always make it good quality. And then we show a child how we might use watercolor, but we're never prescriptive about how they use it. So then they can explore at their own pace. We put beautiful artwork in our homes so that they can model it. And I remember once having a conversation with a friend who had set up a picture of the sunflowers with the idea that the child's going to kind of do something with the sunflowers. And I said, it doesn't even have to be that prescriptive. It can just be that you have a picture of sunflowers in your house, and then one day they notice it, and then they want to make something that looks like sunflowers. So it's getting rid of the power over the top-down approach, which just filters in because that's how we were raised, which I think is really interesting as well. What other creative ways
Well,
are
and to
there?
me, I think it's also about, continuing to always explore and you know, if there's music that you enjoy as an adult, share it with your child. Like children, don't just need nursery rhymes. Like jazz and classical and funk and whatever that is, to me, that is creativity. That's giving them keys to the world, take them to the museum, take them to art shows, go and explore, be in nature a lot, right? It's about, I think, always being curious and even, 100 plus, like I love when I meet older people who are like learning a new skill or finding a new hobby or trying something new or learning a new language. It's like that's what's going to keep us, creative and our brains functioning for a long time.
Yeah, and a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm not creative because you can't draw," but creativity can look like so many ways.
So many
And
ways.
actually, modeling for our children how we're in maybe practicing a piano or, oh, this is hard and how I stick at things. That's a great example to be like a model for our children of being creative as
Or even
well.
cooking. Like let them create a meal. It might
Yeah.
be a little funky, but hey, that's part of it, right? It's very important.
For some people, their cooking is their creativity.
Exactly. Exactly. Very nice. Yeah. Um, there was a question from Kate, how the baby learns to sleep alone in Montessori environment, but also with attachment parenting approach. So not quite sure what the question is, but I will say sleep is a learned skill. So for one, we never sleep train children, the under like 8 months. It's just they need to learn the rhythms of the world of the sun and the moon and so forth after 9 months in utero, where it was always kind of subdued lighting, right? So we're really following their cues, we're observing where we have them close to us, but we have created an environment that is a point of reference for them as to where they're going to be laying down. And at first, it might be a bassinet next to you. You might be co-sleeping, whatever. It's such a personal thing for me But then we also want to create an environment that they can choose to go lay down on, right? So the Montessori floor bed from the very beginning, we are setting them down on it. We can even set them down as a newborn on their tamponcino on their floor bed. They might not spend the night there, but at least they're getting used to it, right? And then we might want to put the bassinet there for nap time. So it's really, at first, it's really what works for you as well, depending on, how the birth went, if you had a cesarean, if you're, able to get up, so forth, right? Because you might be feeding through the night. You probably are. But then it's really about letting them know that this is a place that they can sleep. And attachment for me is also about just responding to them, right? It's not necessarily having to sleep next to them all of the time. It's about if they come into your bed, are you okay with them coming in? If not, then you gently bring them back and love them and so forth. So to me, like co-sleeping doesn't necessarily have to go with attachment parenting, if I'm making much sense. Does
Yeah.
that make
And
sense?
if they choose to do co-sleeping, they can still be Montessori parents as well.
Totally, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think attachment is, I think some people think that Montessori doesn't have attachment, and actually, at the basis of Montessori is the attachment, because without connection, then they don't feel safe. And safety is a really important part of a child's development, particularly in those birth years when
Yeah.
we're guiding them. And so we're always giving them as little help as possible, but as much as necessary to sleep. And in a Montessori approach, but you can, as Jean-Marie says, sleep is such a personal thing. Do the sleep thing that makes sense to you, and yeah, you can still Montessori in
Yeah,
their
but
birthday
it's
mode.
really important to like create the environment for them so that they have the option, right? Because and I remember I had a family that wanted to close sleep from the beginning, but she had already created the child's sleeping environment in their room. And one day this little boy said, "Oh, is that for me?" and slept there and never came back in the parents' bed. So it's about again, giving them the option.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
This is a fun question from Amber. How does Montessori adjust to new technology and AI? And I think this is really interesting because we have such a hands-on approach to education in Montessori, and we have a very interesting way how we introduce technology in Montessori families. So, for example, you will very rarely say a, a laptop or a computer in a 0 to 6 environment, so anything under 6 years old, because it's all about their insensorial stage of development, so they need to use their hands to explore. So even if it was a Montessori app, then they don't feel the same sandpaper texture as they would as they're feeling the actual thing. And the idea of a sandpaper letter is you feel it, you touch it, and you hear it at the same time. So if you're introducing technology, then wait until after they're 6, and then you can use technology as a tool. So that would be actually, okay, I want to design a 3D model and I can't do that. So I'm going to use the technology as a tool. Or there's a very different way of using YouTube to actually create a video about something that you're really interested in, as opposed to passively taking in a YouTube video. But I think we've talked about technology a few times, I think,
I think we have a whole show on
on
screen, so
on screen
we
as
can
well.
link that for sure.
Yeah.
And for me, what's interesting too with, how to adjust to new technology is I think we are as the parents, the adults, we're adapting to new technology. And I think we have to remember that our children don't need to be exposed to it, super young, because by the time that they are using technology, it will be completely different. It will be something, there won't be iPhones or whatever, right? So I think it's really important to let them have their childhood without technology and really be those sensorial learners that they are, and experience the world with their all of their senses before we put a very passive piece of equipment in their hands that can be can be detrimental to their brain development. So, um, and then the whole thing of AI, I think we're all starting to just discover it and all this. And it's interesting because the other day, my 24-year-old, so he's in university, and he was writing a paper, and I was seeing that he was using Chat GPT, so artificial intelligence. And I said, oh, well, how does the university feel about that? And they said, oh, well, they actually promote it, and they gave us the latest greatest version so that we actually learn to use it as a tool. Like Simone says, it's a tool, right? We're not completely dependent on it. We are learning to use it in a proper way. So,
I also think that it will be interesting to see how education evolves with the use of AI, because I think that if you were in school and your teacher gives you an assignment and you could just put into ChatGPT and that gives you a pretty good answer, then there's no point to teaching like that. So in a way, I think that they'll come back to like a more Montessori style education, which is you're working more in the classroom, there's less homework, you're working in front of the teacher, in front of with your classmates, working on projects, things that are interesting, that have meaning, and that kind of thing. So if anything, AI might actually push education back towards the Montessori approach. And I'm not scared of AI because I think put AI in the hands of Montessori children, and maybe it can be used for good. But it is still a very early days. I think it's very interesting that's possible. It's like Google search, but on steroids in a way, like what can come out of it. And I think we need to know what it's capable of instead of like shutting our eyes and going, oh, we don't know what that is. I think we should actually put things in and try it out and see, okay, this is so that you can recognize when children aren't using it properly, how you can use it as a tool. Like what I know someone who uses it as an editor, to bounce ideas back and forward with the chat GPT to make sure that their writing is even better. But yeah, making sure that if your child is, you've seen that they use it, how you can actually guide them to use it for a part, but not to copy and paste it. Just as we would when we were using the internet for the first time and people would Wikipedia and copy and paste things. We've learned how to use it as a research, but actually even better to go to the library to open up an encyclopedia. You're going to find out much more and get a richer understanding than ChatGPT kind of like dissecting everything for you and copying and pasting it.
right.
Or
To continue to be critical thinkers. Like it's not because,
absolutely.
you know, whoever the chat GPT gave you, an answer, like still be questioning it, like, huh, are they correct or not? Just like if a friend had answered a question for you, right? So yeah, hope that helps,
Yeah,
Amber.
thank you, Kate. I love Auden's question. She says, do you have any resources for learning more about Montessori during birth? Currently 35 weeks pregnant and planning our second home birth with a midwife and a doula. That's a
Wonderful.
perfect question for you, for Jean-Marie.
So I do, I have a whole kind of 8-week course that I did through my training, which I call the Art of Childbirth, which is really about learning what is going on for the unborn child prenatally, how you can preparing your environment and so forth. I know that there recently was a Montessori course offered actually for postpartum doulas, which I think is wonderful too. So that is coming more online. But specifically Montessori during birth, I don't. But you can reach out to me and I can get my wheels turning on that. I have a lot of resources myself. Um, but yeah, and wonderful that you are pregnant. Congratulations, and I wish you a beautiful, peaceful birth at home with your midwife and doula. Wonderful.
The other person that comes to my mind is Karen Slabach. I never know how to
Yes.
pronounce
Oh,
her last
yes.
name, but she has
Yes.
some really beautiful work about birthing in a Montessori way. So I'll put her website also in the link in the
Definitely.
show
And she
notes.
was actually, there's actually a retreat in Italy this summer that I contemplated attending all on that. And I hope to do it next year. But yes, very good resource. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful place to start when you think about the child being in utero and that being the first environment, like you were talking about, and how they're already taking in so much from the external environment so that we can prepare them. And these become points of references when they are born and they can hear our voices, the songs that we
Mhm,
sing in our
mhm.
homes, any musical instruments that we play.
Yeah.
And if you've got older siblings, anything like that, they can already, make connections with the baby and that will pass through as they move in.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, the world with us, which is very fun. Oh, right. Carol has a long question, which I'm going to read out, and we'll see how we can tackle it. It says, it's not very related to the topic of, yeah, but I was wondering if you could help me with some advice. My 4-year-old child is very energetic and affectionate. Lately, he jumps on top of everybody, teachers, family, friends, or runs very energetically towards anyone. He's just trying to be nice or give a hug because he's very loving, but he ends up hurting people. For example, my mother cannot move properly and uses a walker, and he throws himself at her all the time to hug her, and I'm afraid he'll make her fall sooner or later. I try to explain that now he's very strong and he hurts people, but nothing makes him change his behavior. He always apologizes when he realizes that he's hurt someone, and you can see that he's sorry, but he's not changing his behavior, and this has been going on for months already. I've tried looking for books about this matter so he understands better, but so far I've only found books to manage children's anger. He doesn't do it out of anger, he just wants to be loving or friendly. Any tips on what to do? Thank you in advance, and congratulations for such a great show.
So my initial reaction is that this child needs a lot of gross motor, physical movement. So I think it's and I don't know if he already has, but just like he has a lot of energy. He has this need. So I would try to channel that into whether it is, martial arts or whether it is just, climbing and running and going in the forest and so forth, so that we get this beautiful big force that he has, or just like big purposeful work around the house, around the garden. And then also being very conscientious when for example, you're going to your mother's to prep, to kind of do some role playing of, remember, we're going to go to grandma, and remember how she walks with a walker. We need to be gentle with her. Let's pretend that I'm grandma. How are you going to greet her, right? So that we're doing these kind of grace and courtesy lessons a little bit ahead of time, so that we are just helping him be aware, and just reminding him how strong he is, but maybe giving him work for that strength that is other than hugging children. And I totally get this because my son was like that, where he just wanted to hug everybody, and unfortunately, when he got to school age, he would get in trouble because he was hugging everybody, which made me very upset. But so,
I think it's also a little interesting side note into consent,
yes.
because we need to actually, even like I have toddlers who go up to another child and go to hug them, and you see the other child going like this. And so you say, oh, it looks like they don't want to be hugged right now. We need to check. Would you like a hug right now? I don't think they do, but I would like a hug right now. And so that they can channel that. So we could keep modeling. The thing about these grace and courtesy lessons that we've talked about before, they just need a lot of repetition too. It's like we might cognitively know the rule or the idea, but actually to be able to have the self-control to stop like bouncing when that's in your body, that's, a lot to ask. So we need to be able to be kind and clear. So a couple of things I think might be helpful as well is to think about setting up the physical environment as well, particularly if your mother's fragile. It's just like, I know that you love playing with grandma, and or even talk to your mother about it. Like, and I want to make sure you're both safe. So should we make it a rule that you're sitting down when he wants to connect with you? He might sit on your lap. Is it okay for him to sit on the lap, and kind of make agreements with both sides about how their interaction is going to go? And I think that could be really helpful. And like Jean-Marie said, that big gross motor movement is really important. But teaching them how to regulate themselves is a big part of our work, right? The self-regulation. So we co-regulate a lot with young children, and then eventually they'll be able to self-regulate. But you can look at like ways that help to decompress their nervous system before you go into public spaces by like this gentle squeezing can be very like kind of relax their nervous system. I remember I used to suck my thumb, and so I know that like sucking helps you like kind of decompress your nervous system and things like that. So sucking through a straw, or hugging some things and that kind of thing can also just really like get not only the gross motor physical things, but it can just also be things, sensory things, that will help. Like, yeah, rubbing your body like that or rubbing their back can help to calm their nervous system.
And I
Just
like that, Simone, because the since this child likes to hug so much, to give himself a big tight squeeze hug, right? Maybe before entering grandma's house or getting their, their wiggles out. So it takes a little prep, and that's the beauty for me of parenting in Montessori is learning to observe, like your child does this, and how do you help him adapt to different situations? So yeah.
I've also popped in the chat a book called Self-Reg by Stuart Shanker, and that is my go-to person for everything to do with self like regulation. And I love that we now use the word regulated, dysregulated, because 5 years ago that was not in my vocabulary. Of course, it was around in more a scientific world, but it takes the shame out of that big behavior. It's just like, oh, you're dysregulated right now. We're regulated right now, as opposed to you're cranky, you're angry, you've got big feelings or whatever. It's just that we're just trying to find not that it's not acceptable behavior, that's not appropriate behavior in that instance. So we're just trying to always, I've taken, yeah, try to say appropriate and not appropriate.
Yes. Yes.
Manage those as well.
And again, appropriate for, for who depends on cultures, it depends on the situation and so forth. But yeah.
And
Um,
there's also the rough play between siblings and things. I'm not sure if there's any siblings or friends and they do rough play. And it's not saying that we have to stop that because, like you say, it is different for different ages and rough play is really important for them. But them also knowing how to say stop. So in our house, we had a bit of a mouthful of a phrase, which was rough play by mutual consent, And so if I heard my kids fighting, I'd kind of like go and make myself visible to see if I needed to step in at all. And if they were okay, then they'd keep playing. And if they were okay, then yeah, they keep playing. And if I could see that someone was having a hard time, then I might just say, oh, does someone need to say stop? And I just have to be kind of like that extra person to maybe make them realize, and then you can go stop, 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 or maybe someone does say stop and the other person is still rough playing, and I can say, oh, I heard someone say stop. And then they're like, okay, yeah, that helps them really to learn how to manage themselves with other people.
so we have another question in the chat, and this is from, I'm assuming, a guide because she or he talks about a child in their environment. So this is a 5-year-old in my environment who doesn't sit in class, just keeps roaming around and doesn't like material either. How to deal with him. Um, so I will share a story of a child I had exactly like that, who was just not really wanting or ready to be in the environment and to choose work and, choose work from the shelf, sitting down and so forth. And this child just needed a lot of big, gross motor. And I was fortunate enough to have a kind of an indoor outdoor environment. I took him out in the garden and we moved a big pile of logs from one side of the garden to the other. And then, oh, no, it really should go there. So he did this physical work. It was purposeful. And I promise you, this child really calmed down after a while, right? This went on for a few days. And then after a while, he just was able to focus and choose work. So that's one thing. The other thing is for me, a child who just walks around and observes, as long as they are not disrupting other children, bothering them, being disrespectful, that is their choice. Like they are learning a lot by observing other children working. So that's my sense on that. What about you, Simone?
Yeah, I think that you have to, it's actually also our responsibility to see what's interesting to them. So try and find out more from the family about what's engaging them. Because I remember hearing once a Montessori educator saying they again had a child who didn't engage in anything. And yes, observation is important, but if it's day in, day out and they're not engaging, then it's keeping our ear to the ground what they're interested in. And I can't remember exactly what the specific interest is. Say it was space or that kind of thing. And then they brought out a book about space. And from that moment, the child kind of lit up. And then they engaged in many areas of the classroom, including the maths and all these other things as well. So it's kind of our responsibility to connect them with the environment. It's not okay for us to just like say, go and find some work. It's our responsibility to make it really interesting for them to, yeah, to take something out that they may not have tried before. So if you see them in the hallway with a like trying to do their buttons up, then you'd be like, oh, this is the perfect time to give that buttoning exercise. Like just looking for any signs of interest. What kind of food do they like eating? Can they help prepare the food? What's their special place? Like every child wants to feel like they belong in a Montessori community. And we need to find their special thing. Are they great at selecting the music for a dance party? What kind of thing is, who are they? That is
Yes, I
basically,
have
I
a
think,
1:15 appointment, but I was told to go ahead and come in earlier.
Okay, what are we doing for you?
So the
we'll just mute this one. I would say.
Yes,
I thought they were
sorry about
asking us
that.
a question.
Yeah, and to Simone's point too, is this child, sometimes it's asking them to be your helper, right? Like what she was saying is this significance and belonging. Like maybe they just haven't found what they're interested in. So sometimes it's, oh, could you help me with this? Or sometimes if you have seen that they've really liked a lesson or really mastered, maybe because they're a 5-year-old, maybe they can show a younger child, right? That's going to give them that confidence of oh yes, I know some of these things, and then kind of give them back that interest.
I think also with five, it can be that they're super bright and that nothing actually is interesting to them, that they've outgrown the environment. So if it's possible for them to, if you're part of a bigger school, can they go and visit the 6 to 12 environment for half a day and see if that engages them as well? So some bright kids show signs of disinterest because they've actually, yeah, outgrown it. So if you're not challenging them, then they challenge us a little bit too.
Or if a child is spending a lot of time in front of a screen outside of our classrooms,
Yeah.
that can
Also,
also, you know, hamper their focus and their kind of will to choose things for themselves because they've been very entertained. So knowing, like, Simone was saying, is getting to know the child a bit better. So I hope that helps.
yeah.
KJ. Yeah.
Okay, we're throwing lots of ideas at you. Hopefully something helps there. And then the next question from you is how to deal with an autistic child in Montessori. And I think that Montessori is for every child. And so we're making accommodations all the time. So if a child needs some help to concentrate, then we're looking how can we support the environment to make them be able to concentrate. If we've got a child who has sensory issues and finds big noises, hard, difficult, then we're teaching them how to cover their hands if we're singing happy birthday and those kind of things. And so similarly, a child with autism, autism could present in many different ways, so it's hard to know. But usually a child with autism likes the structure of a Montessori classroom because the order, they know where everything belongs. But autism, they can also sometimes have some very big feelings and some very big emotions. And then it's our responsibility to make sure that everyone's safe. Do they need a one-on-one assistant to make sure that they can manage those big feelings, or the assistant can help with that, or that's whose responsibility is that kind of behavior? But in general, it would just be, let's see how we can make this child be successful in our environment. We give as little help as possible, but as much as necessary. Or we accommodate in, if the 3-hour work cycle is too long for them. Some children need to only come for an hour and a half because they're overstimulated. So it just means that we have to, again, keep looking at each child, seeing how we can meet their needs. And they also, I think, deserve to get to come to our Montessori classrooms because cognitively, they're usually very challenged and capable. And so, yeah, to put them into a special needs environment may be necessary, but mostly they'd actually thrive in our Montessori classrooms. Again, if we can make them feel like they belong and we can find a way that they can have their needs met as well with us.
And sometimes I will say, if there are if there is a child that is, autistic and really needs some kind of hands-on, sometimes it's necessary to have what we call a shadow, somebody that shadows them, because sometimes that child might be disruptive to all the other children, and that can cause, issues for all the other children. So being just vigilant for what does that child need? Like, do they need somebody that is going to be kind of shadowing them along or not? And not all of them do, of course, because autism is a big spectrum. But again, it's about observing every specific child. Like every child in our environment has very specific needs. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think that it's beautiful that, you're open to having this autistic child because every child needs to feel like they belong. And autism is that character. They're not separate from everything else that happens in their world. But I also dropped in the chat the Tilt Parenting podcast with Deborah Reba. She's a really good friend of mine, and that's my go-to place for everything about neurodivergence because all of the people that she speaks to on her podcast herself and all of her experience as well, it's a very neurodivergent affirming approach that she has that also works very well, that matches very well with our Montessori approach. So that would be something I'd check out as well.
So we have another comment question from a parent who has a 4.5-year-old who has recently become obsessed with being the best, the fastest, the biggest. I ride a two-wheeler and they still have training wheels, etc., with classmates and as well as with their parents. Any words of wisdom would be greatly appreciated.
I love this question because it's so recognizable. And I have a nephew who is kind of like that. And what I do is I help them to feel like I've heard them, like I accept them totally for who they are. Like, so if they said, I ride a two-wheeler and they still have training wheels, I take out the comparison and I just say, oh, you love riding. You're so pleased that you can ride a bike now. And I focus on the thing that they can do. And that, basically it's really easy to go, oh, don't worry, like you've got to be fair, and yes, they're just learning, and we always try and kind of like make it better, but actually just go, yeah, you really ride a two-wheeler now, that's so excited, I'm excited for you, or are you excited for yourself, so to first like acknowledge that that is a skill. And then at other times I would work on them losing and practicing some of the, if you find like card games that are really quick to win, some to lose, some. And in our house, we kind of had this phrase, oh, better luck next time, or congratulations if you lose. And it was a bit formulaic, but it kind of helped in that, period when they're just finding it really hard to lose or to not be the fastest. So that can help as well. But I think like love them for who they are, and that is that they are fast and those kind of things, and just take away the competitive part of it. Because in Montessori, there's one of everything in a classroom so that the kids can't build a bigger tower and all these kind of things. They're collaborating as much as possible. And yet some kids just do naturally have this competitive streak, and we have to honor that as well. We don't want to need to change them or take that out of them. That's who they are as well.
And then sometimes it's also about maybe helping them have kind of, some compassion and empathy. It's like, oh, well, yeah, they still have their training wheel. Maybe they haven't learned how. Maybe you can help them, right? So that it's about you have something that maybe a little bit better. Like, show me, like, I don't know. Can you teach me? So that we can use that strength that they're feeling for the good of others.
Yeah, that sounds good. So are there any other questions? We have 5 more minutes available. If you'd like to ask a question, feel free to drop it into the
And you're
chat.
welcome to
Or
unmute yourself and show yourself. So ACV also put, hold on. Whoops.
I can read it. Additionally, our 4.5-year-old has been telling us about a couple of classmates who speak to them unkindly and tell them what to do at school. Like, you're the baddest, you will never be my friend, you're stupid. It's non-physical and solely verbal, but seems to be happening more frequently. The guides in um, I don't know about the guides that cuts out. It says, our child seems to really like playing with these two children and tells us classmate is only mean to me sometimes, but today she was nice. Or classmate didn't call me stupid today and was nice to me. How does Montessori navigate bullying type of behavior? Yeah, so I'm not sure about if you can fill in the bit about the guides. I think that just bit came out unfortunately as well. But yeah, I think bullying, it goes back to everyone having a place in the classroom, feeling like they belong. And so if you are able to speak with the guides to make sure that those people are also, because bullying comes from wanting power over someone, and that's because you often don't feel seen or there's other need that's not being met. So there's kind of, how do you deal with the bully? And how do you also deal with the kid who might be being bullied? And with the kid who might be being bullied, like your child, the 4.5-year-old, you can actually teach them a beautiful phrase, which it wasn't that I didn't learn this from a Montessori teacher, but it's so Montessori aligned. And basically the advice was, if you tell your child to ignore it, then they often, the bully will keep trying. Right? So you're doing your best to ignore it, but if you cry or you get upset, then the bully's kind of got a reaction. And so they're going to probably continue. But if you say, I don't care if you don't like my blah blah, then you're just being kind and clear. Like, I don't care if you want it, don't, if you're never my friend. Or I don't care if you think that I'm stupid. Or I don't care if you think I'm the baddest. Then they've kind of got nothing to push up against. A bully can only bully someone if they have power over them. So I would be teaching your son to basically learn that phrase, I don't care if you blah blah. And of course, it's going to make them feel sad. And then you're a safe person that they can come to and they process those things as well. And then maybe you can also work with the guides about making sure that, yeah, these children are having their needs met. And yeah, that there's a protocol in place of how we can all be kind with each other and having a conversation in the class, like making sure that everyone's being included in many ways. There's a beautiful book that you might like because actually, no, you're not a guide, are you?
No.
It's called When Children Are Not Yet Peaceful,
Mm.
and it's by
Brian.
Donna Bryant Gertz, yeah,
Mhm.
Donna Bryant Gertz, and it's really beautiful. It talks about lots of scenarios where you have children who are difficult and how she brings them into the classroom with this sense of belonging. I think that's a really good resource as well. Would you have anything to add, Jean Marie?
No, I think you touched it on all. And again, it's with the guide, it's really about those grace and courtesy lessons and to talk about it. And I know when we use positive discipline, also, there's this whole idea of having classroom meetings where we're finding solutions together. It's really about giving the voice to the children themselves. And so that might be, I don't know if your school practices that, but that would be something definitely that would help because this is an age where it's really important to have kind of that social interaction. And as they get older, in that, 6-year-old or 5 to 6, they start really wanting to know what are the appropriate social cues, and they are very eager to know the right and the wrong and so forth. So, important to talk about it and to instill that. So, yes.
Beautiful. Well, we've got a couple of last minutes. If anyone has any other questions, please pop them in the chat. But Jean-Marie, tell us what you're up to at the moment and what's bringing you a lot of joy in your
Well,
Montessori.
like you noticed at the beginning of the show, I'm all about babies these days. I've been caring for some babies and I've been working on a certification for infant massage. So I've been working with parents to show them different strokes on how to massage their babies and really enjoying that. So, yep.
That sounds beautiful.
Yep,
I've had the opportunity to go to Greece and to Estonia to do
that's
some
right.
talk,
Yes.
which was very fun. And they're such beautiful communities. Both of them are smaller communities that are just very strong. And it's really lovely to see these countries bringing Montessori there as well, which was really beautiful. And next week, I start a boot camp to help people set up Montessori play groups wherever
That's
they
right.
are. So
Yeah.
I'm excited about that as well. So I'll drop that link in the recording notes in case anyone happens to want to start their own Montessori play group. Because I've been running my own for the last 17 years and working in Montessori for 22. And yeah, so I'd be love to help anyone do that if they're interested as well.
Wonderful.
So that's the end of our hour, Jean-Marie. It always flies by. Thank you so much for co-hosting and hosting with me.
Yes, and I as I was preparing everything, I realized it's been 9 years. We started in 2016. So we love doing this, and we don't know when the next show will be, but we will keep you posted. And thank you for joining us, and thank you for being wonderful parents and guides and interested in Montessori. Till
Thank you
next
for
time.
coming today. Yeah. Bye-bye.